completely believe in it. When I went to work here in 1974, we went around on natural gas. In fact, our power plant was curtailed 100% from natural gas, and we had to put in propane just to heat the building. We were told that in 15 years we would be completely exhaust all the natural gas.
These are the powers that be that know all
Right.
of this.
This was a government mandated deal.
Okay.
And so from my own experience, you know, I have a problem with it. You know, there's lots of debating going on about whether it is or it isn't, and I tend to want to believe the scientists more than I do the politicians.
Okay, all right. So this means that the rates will go up because we are supposedly putting more CO2 into the atmosphere than the states that have hydroelectric power.
Now there's a little struggle now since we're having cooler summers than we used to. And, you know, this past summer wasn't very hot, and this winter certainly has been colder. It reminds me of the winters that we used to have in the 50s and 60s, you know, when I was a kid. So, you know, so they changed it from global warming to climate change. That kind of fits anything that's unusual.
Okay, all right.
So now you hear it called climate change.
Climate change, all right. So what do you see in the future? What will it mean that we have to do here that's different?
Well, it means that those fees will have to be passed on to the consumer ultimately, which will result in higher rates. Now, let me make it clear, I'm not opposed to doing things that would help the environment, and there are common sense things that we could do to reduce CO2, such as putting scrubbers on the power plants, and everything built in the U.S. now has those. You've heard of the clean coal technology.
Yes.
Well, when we make regulations so stringent that we can't afford them, then it moves our jobs and our economy to China. Now, China builds a coal-fired plant. They're putting one on the line about every 2 weeks, and they don't even clean up, you know. And I believe they're on the same globe that we're on, the best I can tell. And so, you know, what is happening is that we're, you know, it looks like the environmentalists to me would realize that when we run the industry off from the U.S. to another country that doesn't comply with these standards that we do even, then, you know, it ends up being a dirtier world than it would be. In fact, you know, the Olympics over there, they shut a lot of the industry and stuff down to try to clean it up so they could breathe. That's how bad it is over there. But they're putting coal-fired plants on about every 2 weeks over there.
So we are being penalized and expected to, actually they're putting in the bulk of the pollution of the CO2.
Right, and they're getting the jobs that we need in
and
the
they're
United
getting
States.
the jobs. So they're manufacturing, we're buying their products.
There is you know, some politicians say, well, we ought to set the example. Well, I agree with that idea too, if it would work. But, you know, it's an opportunity for the countries that aren't setting any examples. That, you know, they're going to take the jobs away from us. And we need jobs, bad.
All right. Okay, now, I don't know where.
Well, as far as what we can do, I think we should be watching the activities about cap and trade and, you know, see where it goes. As I said, common sense compliance would be one thing, but to do what they're talking about is projected to generate about $1 trillion over 10 years, which is a lot of money. In fact, $1 trillion.
It may pay for our health expense.
Well, it might. It might. Well, that's just, you know, it's just $1 trillion. They're talking more than $1 trillion on health care.
Yes.
You know, I saw something interesting. $1 trillion is, if you put $1 million a day on a payment, it'd take you almost 27 years to pay off $1 trillion if you paid $1 million a day.
See, my mind doesn't even go there. It doesn't even go there in millions. I have trouble when you get over 100.
Yeah, you know, even Carl Sagan, the astronomer, you know, he talked about billions and billions. Well, he's already, you know, he'd have to change to trillions now.
Yes. So do you see that this, do you think it will work as it's being put out? Do you think that we will be asked to pay for this carbon print?
I think we'll definitely hear about it. And I don't see how we can pay for everything that, you know, it's just spend, and both sides, you know, the Democrats and the Republicans have been good at spending. But somehow we're going to have to get some sense to it all because we can't afford, you know, everything that.
Would you mind running for Congress and tell them when you get up there that we cannot afford what they're doing?
Well, somebody needs to. I don't think that's my gift in life to be
Your
a
area of
politician. But
expertise, all right. All right, in order to combat this, in order to get around this, what are we going to have to do?
well, there's not really anything we can do with our power plant. I mean, it already emits less CO2 than a coal-fired plant. And the coal-fired plants that are being built in this area, and we're in on one of them, is the latest technology. It's a clean burning coal plant, but it still emits CO2. So there's not anything that we can really do other than have to pay the tab if they get it passed. And you know, they're going to create a trading place in Chicago that's kind of like the stock market. Because if we're short of credits, why, we'll have to buy them from somebody that's either long, and then when everybody runs out, then the government will charge for them. So then that's where where it becomes. So it's going to be very complex as to how all this is doing.
The government's going to get richer, and we're going to be paying the tab, is what it amounts to.
Right, and it's going to take a lot of people just to implement the plan.
To supervise what new plan they're putting into.
Exactly.
I take a dim view of what's really going on now.
Especially for something that can't be completely proven. I mean, you've got scientists on both sides that are debating this thing. And ultimately, some point down the line, maybe they'll finally come up with the right answer one way or the other. But they're wanting to make changes even before we really know for sure. You know, these are theories that they're working with. And
Okay.
you're right, and the Earth has been cycling hot and cold for, you know, tens of thousands of years.
Yes. So instead of global warming, they call it climate change now. This is the key word. It's climate change. But no matter how thin they slice it, it's still baloney. This is the old statement.
You can tell how she feels.
And so you're either going to have to quit breathing, or you're going to have to pay to put out this carbon dioxide.
And our plants love CO2. That's what they live on and give off oxygen.
Right.
So, you know, it looks to me like it'd make more sense to plant more trees and plant life and absorb the CO2 and put off more oxygen. So.
All right. You've got to run. You've got to run for Congress. Somebody up there has to hold their feet to the fire.
That's right.
All right. I remember coming down, how many years ago? 10?
Put those units in 10 years ago.
10 years ago, and photographing some new units going in here. Are those still working? And
Oh,
are they
they're doing
doing
great.
good for you?
We had problems initially that the company did with some control problems, and we were really concerned about them, but we got that worked out. They're doing a great
And what
job.
do they enable this area to have?
Well, they were the units that we ran during the ice storm for, gosh, I think we put about over 300 hours on them just in that 1 month. And they ran really well. We had no
Enable
problem.
us to have a cheaper rate here
Right.
because we have those as backup.
They are very efficient operating units too. They burn what they call lean to peak. They're burning up every bit of the fuel that goes into the cylinder, and that is something that is all computerized and has to be able to get those kinds of efficiency. So you know, again, fortunately, we had the power plant, we had it in good shape, and we were able to run reliably during the ice storm. One of the challenges is that I was speaking almost 2 or 3 times a day with the hospital because we were able to keep our hospital going where some of the hospitals in this area had to move their patients out and relocate. And so I worked with Rick Carver, who is over the maintenance operation at the hospital. And you know, they had their units running and we had ours running, and most of the time we were able to pull them, or almost all the time we were able to pull them, except for some brief interruptions because we lost both transmission lines or power lines that run to the hospital. We have 2 circuits that we can feed them off of and got them both. So there was some outages to the hospital that was directly related to the line.
So the hospital was one of your very first prime concerns as you began to fan out
Right.
over the city.
Right.
And they were able to keep going? Did they have any of their own generators?
Yes, they had to run their own for a day or so there while we rebuilt the line.
All right, now a lot of people bought generators during that time, and have I noticed that a lot of stores have put in a generator to keep a lot of banks maybe
Yes.
have their own generators? Does that affect their electric rates?
No, and it's good planning because we never know when something could happen. You know, if we had an earthquake, God forbid, something that could be worse, you know. We could lose our gas system and then we wouldn't have the gas to run the power plant, although we do have diesel fuel that will run a pretty good while. But it's much more convenient and better to run on natural gas to generate. But I would encourage people to keep those generators that they bought. I know some people are slowly getting rid of them, but you know, they went for a premium whenever there was a shortage. And so I know I've still got mine that I've had for years.
All right. Were you out of power for several days yourself?
No. My wife and her cats were very comfortable.
Oh, all right. All right. That's good. All right. We've been talking about things that I don't really understand. We've been talking about carbon prints and cap and trade, and that's not really my area of expertise. I do more with tomato hornworms than this area, but you've been talking with Larry Jones, and he's explained a lot of things. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.